Welcome back to Artificial Evidence, where we uncover the cases that linger just beneath the surface, waiting to be seen in a new light. I am your host, Owen Carver, and today we are stepping back to the fall of 1989, to a case that has baffled investigators for over 3 decades. It started with a single word, one chilling, cryptic word, spoken by a woman who had not uttered a sound in over 2 years. A patient at the secluded Black Hollow Psychiatric Hospital, deep in the forests of upstate New York, suddenly broke her silence with a name that led authorities to a long-buried crime, a missing person, and a town that had spent years trying to forget what happened. This is a story about memory, deception, and how the mind can both imprison and set us free. So settle in as we unravel the enigma of the silent patient of Black Hollow. Black Hollow Psychiatric Hospital was built in the early 1900s, perched on a hilltop just outside the town of Seneca Falls. By the late 80s, the facility had a reputation, one of whispered rumors about outdated treatments, unethical experiments, and patients who entered its halls never to be seen again. It was a place that carried an air of quiet dread, surrounded by miles of dense forest and cut off from the rest of the world. Among its many patients was a woman known only as Jane Doe. She had been admitted in early 1987, found wandering along the banks of the Seneca River, barefoot and covered in deep scratches. She had no identification, no belongings, and most importantly, she had no voice. Not a single word, not a single sound. Doctors assumed she had suffered some form of extreme trauma, perhaps a fugue state or catatonia. Tests revealed no physical damage to her vocal cords. There was nothing to explain her silence except whatever horror had taken hold of her mind. For over 2 years, Jane Doe remained mute. She responded to commands, followed routines, and seemed aware of her surroundings, but she never spoke. She never wrote, never attempted to communicate in any way, until the morning of October 22nd, 1989, when she whispered a name, Ethan Marsh. The name meant nothing to the hospital staff, but when they alerted authorities, it sent a shiver through the local police department. Ethan Marsh had been missing for over 15 years. Back in 1974, Ethan was a well-liked 25-year-old college graduate who had returned to Seneca Falls to care for his ailing mother. He worked as a librarian at the local university, known for his quiet demeanor and love of old books. One summer evening, he left work as usual but never made it home. His car was found abandoned near the woods, the driver's side door wide open, the keys still in the ignition. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, just a car, sitting alone in the dark. The case went cold quickly. No witnesses, no suspects, no evidence. His mother died a few years later, never knowing what happened to her son. And now, 15 years later, a woman with no past had spoken his name. The police began digging. They traced every step of Jane Doe's admission to Black Hollow, scouring missing persons reports from across the country. But she did not match any known case. Her fingerprints led nowhere, and her dental records came up blank. It was as if she had never existed before that night on the riverbank. Then came the second break in the case. A nurse, going through Jane Doe's limited personal effects, found something unusual in the pocket of the dress she had been wearing when she was admitted. A small, brittle scrap of paper. It contained a single line of handwriting, "The house in the pines." Detectives recognized the phrase immediately. On the outskirts of town, deep in the woods, there was an abandoned house, one that had been left untouched since the early 70s. It had belonged to a man named Henry Calloway, a reclusive figure who had died under mysterious circumstances just months before Ethan Marsh disappeared. Investigators searched the house thoroughly, peeling back the layers of dust and decay. In the basement, beneath a rotting wooden floorboard, they found the first real clue, a bundle of old clothing wrapped in plastic, hidden beneath the foundation. Among the items was a man's coat, torn at the sleeve, the initials EM stitched into the collar. Forensics confirmed what many already feared. It was Ethan Marsh's coat. Now, the case was no longer just a disappearance. It was a homicide investigation. With renewed urgency, the police revisited everything they knew about Henry Calloway, a former university professor. He had been forced into early retirement after a series of disturbing allegations, rumors of inappropriate relationships with students, of a fascination with mind control techniques and psychological manipulation. When he died suddenly in 1974, no one asked too many questions. But as they dug deeper, they discovered something chilling. Calloway had been connected to a number of young people who had vanished over the years, including a woman named Lillian Carter. She had disappeared in 1974, just a month before Ethan Marsh, and was never seen again. Her description was eerily similar to Jane Doe's. Could Jane Doe be Lillian Carter? The DNA results took weeks, but when they came in, they confirmed the truth. Jane Doe was Lillian Carter. She had been missing for 15 years, living in silence, lost in a mind fractured by trauma. But even with her identity restored, the question remained: what had happened to Ethan Marsh? As police pieced together the timeline, a theory emerged. Lillian and Ethan had known each other, both had attended the same university, both had connections to Calloway. It was likely that both had been drawn into his orbit, manipulated by his experiments in psychological control. Lillian had survived, but Ethan had not. The final piece of the puzzle came from Lillian herself. Under hypnosis, she revealed a fragment of memory of Ethan, tied to a chair in Calloway's basement, of whispered words in the dark, of a door that locked from the outside. With this information, police returned to the house in the Pines, this time tearing up the basement floor entirely. What they found was chilling: a rusted metal door, hidden beneath the foundation, and behind it, a skeleton. The remains of Ethan Marsh. His wrists were still bound with rope. His skull showed signs of blunt force trauma. He had been locked away, left to die, a victim of Henry Calloway's twisted mind. Lillian Carter would never fully recover. The years had stolen too much from her, but she had done what no one else could. She had brought Ethan Marsh home. Thank you for listening to this episode of Artificial Evidence. The Silent Patient of Black Hollow is a testament to the resilience of the human mind and how even in silence the truth will find a way to speak. I am Owen Carver, and you have been listening to Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us keep uncovering the stories that need to be told. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the evidence.